God's like, doo-doo-doo. Hey, Moses, here I am.
Watch out, the bush is on fire. We are in the book of Exodus, and this upcoming Sunday's narrative lectionary gives us a whole lot of Moses. Adrian, what do we cover in the world of Moses this Sunday's narrative lectionary? Exodus 1, Exodus 3. Give us the story.
I think we go from his birth to the burning bush. So it's a lot of Moses. And then there's some things in between where I think he kills the slave and flees and gets married and yeah, it's a lot of Moses. And I think if you're preaching the text this week, I'll be very interested to see where you land. I think the narrative lectionary gives us a focus, but I imagine we're all going to pull to whatever part of the story most intrigues us, delights us, seems to fit with where we in our congregation are this Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know if Moses actually lived this long, but the text divides Moses' life into three chunks of 40. There's the 40 years in Egypt doing good, running the show, and then there's 40 years in the wilderness,
Hmm.
his first time, which leads to the burning bush, and then there's 40 years in the wilderness, which is what comes next. So this is 80 years of Moses in one Sunday. Have fun, preachers.
Have fun. I think, though, that we both are kind of gravitating towards the burning bush. It's just such an amazing story. There's always new insights there. There are so many things in our lives that can feel like they're on fire, and I think it's just a great place to mine for a good message.
Well, and this is a unique one for us because neither of us are in the pulpit this Sunday. We have a guest preacher. We'll talk about all of that and why Beyonce Mass is happening this week. More on that in a minute. The preacher who puts that together is in the pulpit, so we'll touch that.
Yes.
But let's just dive into how we would play with this text so others can, borrow our best ideas
Yeah.
for sermons, for Bible studies, for Sunday school classes. Where's your kind of first handle around the burning bush? What are you kind of drawn to? What's your back pocket burning bush sermon that you've got burning?
Yeah, so I've got a couple. My old standby was just this notion of holy ground and taking our shoes off, and putting our feet in the dirt, which of course harkens back to a sermon you preached a couple of weeks ago.
Life is dirty.
This notion that we um, need to connect with this holy creation that God has given us, and that perhaps in line with your notion of the bushes always being on fire, the ground is always holy. So that's one tack that I take. But where I've been sitting the last few times I've preached this text is the notion of Moses living the life that he's lived and carrying the stories that he carries. I think particularly the murder and the fear that drives him out of Egypt. And this day when he takes his flock beyond the wilderness. Um, the first time I kind of landed on that, it really blew my mind because I think often that we consider the wilderness as kind of the edge of the world, like kind of the last stop. And so for Moses to have gone beyond is like, well, where the heck was that? And then the more mind-blowing piece is that God meets him there. So God is in not only the wilderness, which we were like, oh, that's like the hard place, but beyond that, God is there. And there's no escaping. Moses is really wanting to not be found out beyond the wilderness, but God's like, doo-doo-doo. Hey, Moses, here I am, waiting for you.
I mean, that takes me to Jonah because people
Mm,
think Jonah is the story of a big whale. It's not a whale; it's a big fish.
big
Uh,
fish.
uh, but I love the concept of Jonah because Jonah. I'm just totally jumping to another text. Jonah runs away from where God is supposed to be, and then
Yeah,
God shows up where God's not supposed to be. So it's these
right,
stories of God just
right.
continually is in the places where that's not God's space. Why is God in this area? And like
Yeah,
this is another one exactly in that beyond the
right.
wilderness.
Right. God is right there where you need God to be. I just love that. Running from demons, perhaps, hearkening back to last week's text, running from what he's done, maybe just not wanting to be in touch with other human beings. And that's the place where we learn Jacob wrestles. But I think Moses is wrestling as well out there.
I love it. Well, now I kind of wish you were preaching. That'd be fun to hear.
Yeah, Yeah, I love this story. It would have been fun to preach this one, but we're super excited to have Reverend Dr. Yolanda Norton, the originator, founder of the Beyonce Mass. She's going to be with us Sunday, September 29th, and she'll be in the pulpit on the 1st, which is also World Communion Sunday.
There's a whole lot going on. Yeah,
Whole
Beyonce
lot
Mass.
going
If you're
on.
in the Riverside physical vicinity, join us for Beyonce Mass. That's in person only. We there's something about Beyonce's music that you can't just broadcast everywhere, I guess. So that's only in the building. But then yes, World Communion Sunday, she will be back at Riverside preaching in the pulpit, and I don't know where she's going to take this text. That's half
I'm
the
not
fun.
sure either. There's so many places she can go, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what our community does with it
Yeah.
in their different houses of worship.
Well, you hinted at my favorite, landing place with this text, which is, the bush is always burning, the ground is always holy, and I love that concept. I am indebted to Lawrence Kushner, a Jewish rabbi who wrote a book called. He wrote a couple books that I've read. One was called Jewish Spirituality: A Brief Introduction for Christians, which is great, thin little book. Then he has a book called God Was in This Place and I Did Not Know, which obviously focuses more on the Jacob story, but has connections to this one as well. Um, and I just love the question, when did the ground become holy? Because, I grew up assuming the ground became holy in that moment, right? It was just normal ground and then it was holy ground. But I think the mindset is no, no, the ground was always holy.
Always.
Only Moses was too busy chasing the sheep to notice it. And
Hmm.
even the sense of a burning bush. It's not that a burning bush was this rare, like that would happen in the desert. It's dry
Right.
place. The unique thing about this bush is that it's burning and it was never consumed. It
It's
just
never
wouldn't go
consumed.
out. So we see something that looks like it's just the ordinary, but if you readjust the prescription, you realize there's something a little more extraordinary right below the surface.
Extraordinary.
When you
Yeah.
take off your shoes and take away those layers that are numbing your feeling, you can feel the holiness that's been in the dirt the whole time. And that sort of radical imminence, rocks and trees and skies and trees, God with me everywhere kind of mentality. So that's my G.
Right. And I think your take is so beautiful because I think it invites us to radical noticing or
Yeah,
radical awareness. The radical uh, immanence of God is always present if we, take the time to pay attention.
yeah,
So that is a call, I think. Definitely a word for us here in New York City when we're hustling and bustling, but I imagine also for you guys there in Michigan, maybe in your cars and on your long runs. Maybe on your long run, actually, you have more time to notice the imminence of God. I remember you
yeah.
telling me about getting to the end of a path and there being a tree and falling down in the dirt. There's no falling down in New York City, let me tell you,
No, no, no.
unless you're like
The dirt.
having a
Stay off
medical
the dirt. Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
But there definitely are opportunities to notice the imminence of God in the people we pass, in the ways we engage each other, the way people, just total strangers, will come around to help someone who might be having a medical emergency or notice something that a cute kid is doing on the subway. So the bushes are burning all around us, and this is an invitation to pay attention.